Hey guys, this is Brian Leggett and Tara Leggett, and we are out of the blue. Um, we are coming in tonight. This is Marriage Monday. I want to really talk about blended families, right? So, to give a little bit of background, um, in college, I had my first child, my sophomore year of college, and I did not meet Tara until my senior year of college. So
I'm much
going
younger.
into my senior year, so it wasn't that
Much
much,
younger than him.
right?
I'm
So
25.
so when I first met her, kind of to give you some background of what was going on in my life. Once I had a Layla, I knew pretty early on that things were not going to work out with her mom and I. I was straight up with it. Told her like, look, this ain't what it's gonna be. Um, I will always be there for my daughter, but as far as you and I, this ain't working. And so I mean, from that day on, it was for me. It was business. It was I need to. I don't want to say check the boxes, but I needed to do what I'm supposed to do as a man in providing for this child, as well as continue to get my education, as well as continue to figure out who I am in life and grow and learn and live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we end up getting separate apartments, did the whole like family arrangement thing where, we had split times and everything. And this summer going into my senior year, her mom moved back home. So of course that meant Layla went with her. Um, and for me, I was done with school pretty much. Like I'd already graduated, or I only had to take like one more class to graduate. And so I just was like, you know what? This is the first time I've actually been able to enjoy my college life. I'm about to live it up. I'm about to live, right? And so that's kind of when I met you.
And for me, I was coming fresh out of high school. I had already kind of been like partying a little bit when I was in high school. So I was ready. I lived like 45 minutes away from the school we both went to. So I already kind of knew where I was. I knew some people. I had my little group of friends. I'll never forget the day I met Brian. I was walking, it was the first day of school, and I was walking to my second class. And he walked me to the class. I went in, I sat down, I met one of my first friends there, Chelsea. And we introduced ourselves, and she told me she was a trainer for the football team. And I said, I just met a football player, but I can't remember his name. Bigger guy, like explaining from Mississippi, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, that's B Legs, but he has a kid. And I was like, he's canceled. That was my one drop dead. Like, I don't want all that drama. I don't even know if I am about kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that was not going to be it for me. And even now, like when my friends are like, "Oh, I met this guy, I really like him, but he has kids," I'm like, "Don't do it." But clearly, I don't take my own advice, and I'm glad I don't because I have this beautiful life because I don't. But yeah, that was one of the first things that I knew about him was, oh, that guy has a kid.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I tried to never let it define me. Um, it was something that was clear. I don't like to say held me back. It was something that I consciously had to think about when making decisions, right? So like I had an opportunity to move to Arizona, and I didn't take that opportunity, of course, because that was too far. Um, Even when I came to Lexington, the whole original plan was to do this so that I could then move closer to her. We moved to Morgantown to be closer to her. So it was like a lot of decisions that we made early on was based off of just trying to be in a better situation and be there for her. And well, I don't regret any of it. I feel like it's gotten us to a great point, and we've lived an amazing life thus far.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's easy for me to say that at year 7, but in the beginning, I feel like it was stressful and it was a lot because we were coming out of a long distance relationship. He was in Lexington, I was in Huntington. Our last couple years of being a year when we got back together, you were still in Lexington, and So we had to go through that transition of both of us moving to a new city, then adjusting to living together, which we weren't used to, then adjusting to this whole new family dynamic. And when I first met Brian, Alayla was 2. When I first met her, no, when I first met him, she was younger than 2. I did not do kids, so like when he would go and pick her up, I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll see you later." Like, but so when I really started being around her, it was when we started getting more serious. So she was like 3, going on 4, and she was 5 when we got married, and so that was a huge transition too. Brian's always been in fitness, so his schedule is crazy, and he works evenings and stuff. And when I was in pharma, when we first moved to Morgantown, I was the one a lot of times dropping off to daycare, picking up from daycare, bath time, dinner time, bedtime, all of that. And with that also came, on top of that, just the regular new couple, new marriage stresses, because the first year is not the honeymoon for a lot of people. I feel like there's a lot of adjusting, and then on top of that, all the extra drama, just not even like just like from them getting into it, it was from everywhere. Like, it's such a big change for everybody, for his parents, for her, for just everything. For my parents, it was a huge thing. So I do feel like it's a lot to take on. Like, you really have to I guess like with anything else in marriage, like this is the foundation, and make sure that's strong, because everything else can be really difficult if you're not on the same page here.
I feel like, going back to what you said about the drama, I understand the drama a little bit more now, because then it was more like, not that I didn't understand it, it was just more like I had expectations, and then she had expectations, meaning Alayla's mom had expectations. And anytime my expectations weren't met, then I was upset. Anytime her expectations weren't met, then she was upset. But a lot of times in that situation, we weren't communicating our expectations.
I mean, and think about how hard parenting is for us. And we're in love, and we've been married 7 years.
Right.
And if Vivian is fussing and you don't hand her to me immediately to nurse, I'm like, this dude, man, he better get out of my house. Like, so I can't imagine dealing with all those emotions and not being with somebody that you love. Like, that's a recipe for arguments. And I feel like if you can give, like anybody in a co-parenting relationship, if you can give each other that understanding that like that arguing is natural, and if you loved each other, you would sugarcoat it, but you don't, so you don't, then you can maybe understand where the other person is coming from a little bit more, because parenting is really hard, like even when you're married and in love, in my opinion.
It is. I mean, honestly, it's just, as a dad, for me, I was a single dad for quite a bit there, and it was just like, I just got to do what I got to do. There wasn't anybody coming to save me, trying to do her hair. Thank God for Miss Teresa, because she used to do her hair back in the day.
And that was another thing that caused stress between us, because when we moved in and got married, I was like, I had these expectations for what we should be doing for her, and like, this crazy work schedule you're trying to work is not going to work, and doing this is not going to work. Like, we need to be focusing on being a family and building this unit, and then to top it all off, I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of just winging it. I mean, luckily I kind of knew how to do hair, and I could maybe make a decent dinner, but other than that,
but the one thing I can take away from it is we had our expectations, but Alayla's expectations were so much more simple. It was like, can you do my hair? Can you feed me? You want to play with these dolls? Like, that's it.
On my 21st birthday, 22nd birthday? 21st, because 22nd was right before we got married. She told Brian she thought I was 6. She thought we were just friends hanging out. And I'm like, yeah, we really did just be winging it, but like, I have a good time. But like, I was not always sure that I wanted kids. But then once we got into a relationship and I started hanging out with her, helping out with her, but it was really hanging out, like, the relationship with her as it grew, it made me realize like, yeah, I do want more kids. I do want her to have more siblings, and like I like this. I like this kid. She's a good kid. And that was one thing that made it hard for me when I would like look for resources or groups to help with transitioning into being a stepmom. A lot of them were like, oh my gosh, my stepkid is this, my stepkid is that. I didn't have that. Like I had a great stepkid. Everything else was hard. Like there's been plenty of time where I definitely liked her much better than Brian. So, I mean, every situation is different, but that's one thing I have always been blessed with is, I mean, she's a good kid, so that makes it a lot easier.
It's true. So one thing I do notice when it came to time for us to actually have our own kid and start our own like family and stuff like that, I think it helped to have the split time, and it helped to have time where so our visitation was every
That was when we're still in Morgantown, so it was every other weekend. Yep.
Yeah, it was every other weekend. So it was like we had enough time to ourselves to build our foundation and build who we were, as well as we had enough time with her in order to like continue to grow and everything. And so I do feel like that helped, because once LB came into the picture, it wasn't a I hope she don't feel like this, but in my opinion, she never felt like, oh well, my dad's about to run off and start another family. It's like, no, our family is growing, just that part of it, right?
That was one of the two hardest times for me being a stepmom. Was first when we first got together, all the drama, I was not expecting it. I thought, yeah, of course Alayla's mom has a problem with him. They have history, they have all these problems. Like, I just showed up here, I send your daughter home with cute hairstyles. She's fed, she's happy, she's loved, we're cool. And I did not expect all the drama that came with that. And a lot of things I still don't quite understand, but some of them I can see, just because, like, you know, you want to, as a mom, you want to be in control of everything in your kid's environment. You know, like there's moms that have trouble even taking their kid to daycare because they feel like, man, this should be me doing all this. So I can't imagine having to send my kid somewhere for weeks at a time. Like, I can't. And I'm glad that that's not our situation. I hope it never is. So I give some grace for that. But I was not prepared for all of that. I wasn't prepared for kind of how many hands were in, like hands-on with her, with raising Alayla, because you guys were so young when she was born. Like, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, you co-parent with her mom, but it was also like kind of like you co-parent with your parents too. And it's just all these different needs, all these different people to keep happy, and all these different, like, you want to do this, get approval here, 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 here. And I felt like a lot of times we didn't have any power as a family. So that was difficult. But then the second time was definitely when I was pregnant with LB. I felt like, I almost felt like rejected, as if like, oh, it was cool when you were helping out with the kid that was already there, but we didn't really want you to have your own kid. Like, that was a lot of conflict. And also, like, now when I talk to moms about having their second kid and how hard it was being pregnant while having LB, a lot of times people say, oh yeah, it was nothing like the first time. Like, you know, the first time all you had to do was be pregnant. And while a lot of times that was true for me, every other weekend, or like when I was pregnant in the summer, like, I didn't really have like that first pregnancy experience. And I do think sometimes I romanticize it. Like, I've talked to my best friend about this, and she's like, she had her first kid really young. We were just getting out of high school. And she was like, you know, I didn't really have that fairy tale first pregnancy experience either. And, you know, it's just something you have to accept and move on. And that took a lot. I think that a lot of that, and just how I felt directly postpartum, and the guilt I felt, which now I understand more. But yeah, when I first had LB, I was really protective of him. I remember Layla was sick, and I was like, I really don't want her to hold him right now. Like, he's only a couple weeks old, but like, you feel guilty about feeling that way. Now that I have Vivian, I also, like, LB is too wild around her sometimes. I'm like, LB, just move. But like, I can say that to him because he already knows. You know, like there's never a thought in his mind like maybe she doesn't love me as much as Vivian. But for me, I felt like I need to sugarcoat that. I need to tap dance around that and trying to worry about how not just how she felt, but about how I was perceived during that time. I do think led to a lot of the issues I had with my mood and kind of bouncing back into being myself postpartum with LB. Now I don't have guilt when I'm like, LB is too close. He needs to back up. I need a second for him to go do something else. And maybe that's just me. I know some moms love the interaction with their older kids and their babies. They love seeing them hold them. For me, it is anxiety inducing all around, and I just navigated the best that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to have another one, because you remember done, he has not done the procedure to make sure we're done. I think I would still feel the same way. If I had another kid in 2 years, I would not want, or 3 years, I would not want Vivian holding that kid immediately. Like, I just, that's just how I am.
Viv's the goat.
She is very cute. She is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but those were the hardest times for me, and just navigating adding another kid. And there were times when I felt like I know we've always made decisions to make the best move for our whole family, but there were times when I felt trapped. Like making that decision to leave Morgantown and come back to Lexington was really hard. I carried guilt around with that about that for a long time. But the truth of the matter is, like, year after I moved, the job I was working at did a ton of layoffs, and we were afraid of what that would do for that city's economy, because there's really only 2 employers there, and what it would do for the value of our home and what it would do for everything else. And then to top it off with the fact that we had no ties there, we had no family there other than Alayla. It was a hard move to make. And at the time, LB was 10 months old, 9, 10 months old. It was really difficult, and that was another big bump for us. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
What do you think the hardest things for you were?
Just being stuck in the middle. Like it's hard enough to raise a kid, but then to raise a kid and then keep, like you said, keep everybody happy. Like, you thought she was feeling it. I'm the one that has to answer the phone calls. I'm the one that has to answer the questions. And then I'm also the one that has to keep a smile on her face. So it's like you have to be a buffer, and you have to be demanding, and you have to be understanding all at the same time. And like now, it's gotten a lot easier.
Yeah, that's the one thing. The older they get, in my opinion, the easier it gets.
Yeah, but then I try not to, because now it can be so easy because she can make her own decisions. But is she really ready to make her own decisions? Like outside today, the kids all wanted to ride LB's bike, and I just kept telling him, you don't have to get off your bike if you don't want to. But in his mind, he's like, oh, but my friends want to ride my bike. And I'm like, no, you don't have to do this. And so I think a lot of times she's put in situations the same thing, and I just want to tell her the same thing. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And, you know, she gets caught up in trying to please too many people. So, you know, it's a
hard
different
too,
level.
because she's a sweet kid, and she also, like, I think a lot of times people look at her, and I mean, she's taller than me, but like, she's only a 12-year-old little girl. Like, I wonder how people would treat her if she was the size I was at 12, you know? If she was like a tiny girl, would they still be like, oh yeah, she can make her own, she can do this, she can do that? Like, no, I don't want her to have that kind of pressure on her. Like, when she's here, that's one thing I try to keep, like, you don't have to be an adult right now. Like, I love when she helps out. She does help out. She's awesome. Help them out with her and LB do their own, like, bedtime thing, and she helps clean up and stuff like that. But I don't want her to feel like she has to be a third adult in this house, because she's not a third adult over here.
Right.
She's just a kid.
Still sneaking cookies.
Sneaking cookies. He came down here. We had 4 cookies left. LB didn't get a cookie because he wouldn't eat a sweet potato. Look, come down here. There's 1.5 cookies to top up.
And that's the thing. Like that's how those are my moments where I'm like, oh, she's still a baby, because she just doesn't have the mental awareness to just close it back up. Right?
That was the other thing though. When we first got together, you and I had a lot of disagreements because I felt like he was really hard on her. Like I felt like we don't need to be the disciplinarians every other weekend. You know, like that's tough. To know that every other weekend you can go somewhere and be in trouble for stuff you did over the past 2 weeks. Like, you can do tons of bad stuff over the past 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, it's been a journey. It has been a journey. But I can say, like, in the beginning, when I was really seeing, like, how hard things were, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I was built for this. But now, I'm like, it's easy. I love when she comes here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, I think, was just taking myself out of that equation and out of the situation to always be getting drama, because I have too high of anxiety for all that. And just put your blinders on. I have my blinders on. It's just only these kids to me a lot of times. And you.
Well, guys,
you got any?
I'm done. I'm so tired.
I was going to say, do you have advice?
Advice?
Advice for any young men out there in your situation, not just ones that are getting married.
Actually, yeah. I was thinking about this weekend. Being a dad is not as hard as people make it out to be. When you think about it, being a good man ain't really that hard. All you got to do is keep it in your pants.
Wow.
Show up.
Oh my gosh.
And listen. That's it. And be extremely patient and understanding to these kids. But I mean, really, that's all you have to do is just keep it in your pants, show up, and listen. And it's just like the rest of it just like takes care of itself. I feel like. And maybe that's just because I have like a really good work ethic. And like stuff like that comes natural to me. So maybe those are issues that I never deal with and other people might struggle with. But for me, I feel like the only times I've been off kilter or have gone astray is, luckily, black men don't cheat.
Oh my gosh.
So never had the problem with that one. But number 2 and 3, showing up and show up on time and listen.
Good night. Good night. Good night. It is 11 p.m. here, and he is very tired. Mm-hmm. My advice to any women getting into a situation where you're going to be dating somebody who has a child, date that person. Don't date that person and the child. That's my opinion. I see a lot of biological moms fussing about like, oh, they just bringing all these women around the kid. Like, how do you even know if you want to be a part of that kid's life and make a blended family if you have never even got to know him outside of just the father role? Like, he can get a sitter, or when it's not his parenting time, you guys go on a date and make sure you like each other. Like, I feel like I had to make sure I liked him before I got in any deeper. And I do love you. I've always loved you. So then you know if it's worth it to make all this work. And my second advice is, like, when you come in, you're going to be a newbie in the situation. You're going to hear all the background, and you're going to be more mad than either one of them is. Don't worry about it. Like, just focus on the kid. Don't be trying to right all kinds of years of wrong and all kinds of stuff. Like, it don't really matter. As long as you are happy, your family is happy, the kid is happy, things are peaceful, it don't really matter who feels like they won or lost.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Anyways, you guys took our Jane the Virgin watching time, so now I'll have to binge watch tomorrow instead.
Mm-hmm. Peace, love, happiness. This is Out of the Blue.